Right now, I want to bring on somebody who I hope will bring some hope and some maybe some inspiration for you if you're feeling like you don't have a voice anymore, you don't have any place to go with your ideas and with your passion and with your activism because you still love this country, you care about this country, and yes, you want to fix what's wrong with this country. Mark Meckler joins us. He's the president and co-founder of the Convention of States Project. Mark, Happy New Year, and thanks for being here.
Happy New Year to you, too. And it is a Happy New Year, despite all the madness.
That's right. There's a lot of possibilities in front of us. And real fast, I'd love for people to understand who you are, where you came from, how we first met when you were working with the Tea Party movement in 2009. That was a time, Mark, when Barack Obama had won the presidency. There was a 60-vote majority for Democrats in the Senate. There was something like a 54-vote majority in the House of Representatives for the Democrats. So basically, the Democrats could do whatever they want, and we had a lot of voters who were disaffected by the waning days of the Bush administration because of the bank bailout after the financial crisis. It was, frankly, in my opinion, a lot more depressing then than it is right now.
Yeah, I mean, it was a dark time in American politics, and we got to remember, out of darkness, that's where you find the light, right? The light becomes most visible when things are most dark. And that's what happened with the Tea Party movement. I was blessed to be one of the people to found the largest Tea Party organization in the country, Tea Party Patriots. We built that up to literally to 23 million members around the country. We had the largest swing in Congress since 1938. And we were very excited. We thought government was going to change for good forever. The sad part is it didn't. And so I've gotten engaged in a whole bunch of other political activities. I know we're going to talk about Convention of States here. But the bottom line is I just never gave up. I just never would give up. I don't know how to give up, and I don't think that we should give up on our nation.
There are a lot of people who are inclined to do that because they'll say, Mark, what's the point? My vote doesn't matter anyway, because they truly believe that there were, and by the way, I personally believe absolutely there were a lot of unprecedented modifications to many states' voting statutes to allow for the opportunity for widespread fraud through mail-in voting, and I believe that occurred in some states. There are people who will see that and think, what's the point? My vote, my voice doesn't matter. What can I do?
Yeah, and so I think they're right. Like, everything you just said is absolutely correct. And I think the nation is in a time when we're as divided as we've been in any of our lifetimes. We're experiencing the sensation of breaking apart as a nation. I actually call this the great decoupling, and it's not just a sensation, it's happening. But I think if you want to put it in context, Larry, it's important to remember we've always been divided as a nation. All the way back to the original 13 colonies, Americans have always been a really diverse people. And if you go back to colonial times, the folks in the different colonies, they hated each other. There was all this sectarian Christianity. The different colonies didn't really like each other. And so this is our history, and I don't think there's any reason to fear right now. This is exactly why the founders designed a federal system where we did a limited number of things together as a nation, the enumerated powers, for lack of a better term. The rest was left to the states and the people. And so there is a solution to what's going on in the country right now, to the corruption, the disgusting stuff we see going on in Washington, D.C., and that is to do what we were always intended to do, which is decentralize the power again. And we need to do that because then people won't feel like so many things are being crammed down on them from D.C. If the decisions come from D.C., as they usually do today, then half of the population is always going to be pissed off. So the solution is not to break the country apart. It's not to give up. The solution is just like in 1787 to diversify the power, to spread it out. Because the world's way too dangerous for us to talk about splitting apart the country. We need to be a unified force for liberty and freedom.
So let's get to that solution, because as you cite our founding fathers and the origination of our nation, the 13 colonies turned into the United States of America and the Union, born there in the Constitutional Convention, the more perfect Union. They saw this coming. They gave us a mechanism to be able to sort of hit Control-Alt-Delete, do a little bit of a reset, and said, hold on, we're going in the wrong direction. Maybe we need to modify things a little bit. And that's what's known as an Article 5 convention. Article 5 referring to Article 5 of the Constitution. It's right there. They gave us the roadmap, Mark.
Yeah, Article 5 gives us the power as people in the states to call a convention, to propose amendments, to take the power away from D.C. and give it back to the people in the states. It takes 34 states to call the convention. And as of today, 49 states have considered it, 30 states have passed it through committee, 23 states have passed it through one chamber or another, and 15 states have fully adopted the resolution. So we're 19 states away from getting it done. This year, as we head into legislative season all over the country, I have 20-plus states that are considering it. I think we have a good shot for getting 6 to 10 on board right now. And the convention itself would have the power to propose amendments doing things like imposing term limits on federal officials, imposing fiscal restraints on D.C., and limiting the scope and power of the federal government. And by the way, anything that comes out of convention takes 38 states to ratify it, so there's nothing to fear, nothing crazy can come out of convention. But what we can do is we can take our power back from Washington, D.C., and we can do it peacefully.
Yeah, and let's just, I don't want to gloss over this because, we have talked about this quite a bit, Mark, but we always have new people joining us, new listeners, and I want to reiterate, because when they hear, oh my gosh, a new convention to modify the Constitution, that means that AOC and Bernie Sanders, they'll be able to do away with the Second Amendment and do away with the Electoral College and do away with the free market system and institute socialism because it'll be a free-for-all at this convention. Is that the case?
No, and that's just craziness. But I'm going to start with this first, which before we go into the real reasons why that's crazy, is I just got to say, anybody who's against this now, with what's coming in Washington, D.C., with a Harris-Biden administration, with the Democrats in control of both houses of Congress, with their ability to pack the Supreme Court, add states, if you're against it now, you may not mean to be, but you're standing with the Marxists. And you're supporting the Marxists, because this is the only solution I know. But here's why it can't run away, and this is the most important reason. A convention has no power to do anything except make suggestions. And I don't know about you, Larry, but never in my entire life have I thought, oh, my God, people are going to make suggestions to me. I can't let that happen. It's so scary.
Right.
It's literally never happened. People meet, they make suggestions, and it takes 38 states to ratify anything that comes out of it. And so I want you to think about how high the bar is. That's the highest bar in anything in the entirety of American politics. There's nothing else that requires 3/4 of the states to accept it before it actually happens. And I want to flip that math on its head. If you're a conservative like me or libertarian and you're worried about things like, oh, they're going to do away with the Second Amendment, I would say it takes only 13 states to stop anything that we might not like. And to be more realistic, it takes one House in each of the most conservative of 13 states in America. Really, it takes only one committee chairman in one House in each of the most conservative 13 states in America. And if you understand how procedure works in legislatures, they don't have to take up this amendment. They can just ignore it, and then it's not ratified. That's the easiest thing for a legislature to do. Just don't talk about it. So to deal specifically, and this is important with the Second Amendment, there are 24 states where you can actually carry a gun in the state legislature. 15 of them allow citizens to just walk into the legislature carrying a firearm and sit in the gallery. Does anybody really believe that in those states you could propose and pass and ratify an amendment to take away your firearms from you? I mean, if you believe that and you go into one of those states and you suggest it, I've been in all of them. I would say you ought to be carrying a firearm. You're probably going to get chased out by armed people.
So to that end, Mark Meckler, and we're talking about and let's just be clear, this is the way, it's the mechanism that the founders built into our system through Article 5 of the Constitution, where we, the people, through our state legislatures, can take back the conversation from Washington, D.C. So we can have a conversation about where we're going as a country and what we can fix out of the country. Because so many, you look at that great map of the United States of America that shows all the red counties versus the blue counties, let alone the red states versus the blue states. And there are so many people in this country who feel like they are in no way represented by the power structure of Washington, D.C. Well, this is how all those red counties fight back, right?
Absolutely. And look, I know there are a lot of people who are in a revolutionary mood right now, and I think they're right. I understand that. I empathize with that. And I think we need a revolution. We need a peaceful revolution. And this is a peaceful revolution. Imagine we actually have the power. We, the people, all those red counties that you see, we have the power to put our hands around the throat of Washington, D.C., collectively speaking, and to shove it back in the original constitutional box. I think that's pretty radical, and I think that's what the times call for today.
Yeah. And as usual, the answer always lies in the Constitution and the process, and that's so critically important. So to that end, if Mark Meckler were the James Madison of this new convention, this Article 5 convention, what would the priority be? Give people an understanding of what we could actually change here, or what we could, reinstill in our founding document, in the Constitution, to immediately show progress in Washington, D.C. and change the way business is done in our federal government?
Yeah, and I would say, if I had to take a role, I'm probably more like Sam Adams, because I don't think I'm anywhere near as smart as Madison. But Sam Adams he sort of had a connection with the American people. He was the narrator of the American Revolution. He understood what people really wanted. And here's the things that we can do that I think most people just want. Number one, we can impose term limits on Washington, D.C., and that's not just Congress. This is important. It's also the bureaucrats, the people we refer to as the deep state. They're the deep state because they're there for 30 years or 40 years in Washington, D.C. And we can limit their terms in D.C., can limit Congress's terms. We can limit the terms of federal court judges, including the Supreme Court. I think all of those things are vitally important. Number two, we can impose fiscal restraints in Washington, D.C. That includes a balanced budget amendment supported by about 80% of the American public. But I think that has to be coupled with taxation caps and spending caps, and importantly, in limiting the federal government's power to impose unfunded mandates on the states. We need to stop the federal government from forcing the states to do things. And then finally, in my opinion, most importantly, we can limit the scope, the power, and the jurisdiction of the federal government. I'll give you specific examples. The majority of Americans don't trust, and don't want the Department of Education, and we should do away with it. That money should never leave the states. It should stay in the states. The states should decide how to educate their own people. And that would extend, by the way, to things like the EPA. The EPA should have it shouldn't exist at the federal level. Every state does its own environmental protection. That's the way it was intended to be originally. That's the way it should be now. And frankly, there's a lot of different things like this. The Department of Agriculture, the EPA, the FDA, all these alphabet soup of organizations or administrative agencies should be given back to the states, and the states should govern themselves and govern themselves differently as we were originally intended to do.
So, Mark, as if people are listening, there's no such thing as local radio anymore. People could be and are listening to this nationwide right now. If they're in, either in the state of Maryland, where it seems, like a pipe dream, or California, or in New York or Illinois, they might think, well, we'll never get something like this passed for our state. Our state will never sign on to an Article 5 convention. They can still work on something like this, right? They can still participate in this process and help Convention of States project in those states where this is a real possibility.
Yeah, so interesting, because I was on a call last night with our leadership from all over the country, and the states you just mentioned, Maryland, California, Illinois, these are states where we have some of our strongest teams and some of our strongest leadership, and they are working in those legislatures. And it doesn't really matter which 34 legislatures call, because ultimately what's going to happen is all the states are going to convention. And so it's important for every state, even the bluest of blue states, to have a strong contingent of people who understand the Article 5 process, who are advocates for it, and will help guide it once the states get to convention. And we do have states help each other across state lines. Like I said, I did a leadership call all across the nation last night. So you happen to pick some of my very strongest states, and they're very blue states.
Okay, so what should they do? What can they do?
They should go to conventionofstates.com. They should first sign the petition. That'll go to their state legislator and let them know they're in support. And then they should click the tab that says Take Action. And when they take action, that'll give them the chance to volunteer. The most important thing they can volunteer for is to be what we call a district captain and just be responsible for their own district in the state legislature. It's not a big job. It's just a job where you commit to doing something. We can all lament what's happening to the country, or we can do something to fix it.
Mark Meckler, conventionofstates.com, conventionofstates.com, and take a look, read about it, educate yourself, enlighten yourself, share it with people who you think might be interested in this. And this is definitely not only a resource for you to use for education and really great information, but it's also something that can focus and channel all of those energies and passions that you're feeling right now, and find out what's going on in your state. Mark Meckler, great hearing from you as always. Happy New Year. And I suspect we're going to be talking quite a bit this year.
It's going to be a busy year. God bless, Larry. Thanks for being out there fighting the good fight.
I'm here live in Philadelphia at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. When you hear the phrase lives, fortunes, and sacred honor, these are the folks we should think of, those who anonymously gave their lives. Well, today you have a chance to volunteer. You need to volunteer for conventionofstates.com, the movement that's going to save the country. These folks were willing to step up and give everything We need you to give just a little bit. Go to conventionofstates.com and volunteer today.